Okay, so we're here to talk about restorative practice. I tried to define it. It's so difficult to do, but I gave it my best shot. Restorative practice can look and be implemented differently from one campus to another, but at its core, it centers on building community, developing healthy relationships built upon kindness, generosity of spirit, and repairing harm when conflicts happen. It's seen possibly as an alternative to traditional punishment, maybe even circumventing that school-to-prison pipeline. Restorative practice stems from traditional indigenous concepts around peacemaking, community building, conflict resolution, such as talking circles. And so we'll get right started. Tamar to start, then whoever would like to jump in. What are the most effective ways to implement restorative practices? What are the components of successful programs?
Thank you, and hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So, students thrive, and we all thrive, really, when we feel safe and supported and valued, when we feel like we belong. And that's what restorative practices are really designed to do. So when you hear the term, you might be thinking about something that just happens after a student breaks a rule. You might think about restorative circles and mediation to repair harm that was done. And this is part of restorative practices, but really they are so much more than that. So really it's a whole school trauma-informed approach to building relationships and positive communications between teachers and students, across students. And so what does that look like day to day? When it's done well, it looks like community circles in classrooms every day that build trust and community. It looks like teachers checking in with a student when they aren't sort of going with the program and sort of asking, what's going on with you? And trying to understand that. It looks like I statements, teaching students how to communicate and understand what they're feeling, and really resolving conflicts before it gets to the point where something really serious has occurred. So it's not just reactive, it's really promotive, preventive, and it's not piecemeal, it's holistic.
And it starts at the beginning of the day, right? It was kind of a coming together of children.
Exactly.
And so, Sarah, I was wondering, how do we make sure we include all student groups? We've got children who don't yet speak English in this country, many of them, more than 5 million in our public schools. We've got children who are members of the LGBTQ plus community. How do we make sure that we serve the whole school when we implement these practices?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it really builds off of exactly what Tamar was just talking about. So I was talking with my colleague Elise Poss, who spent some time evaluating implementation of these programs in the state of Maryland. And one of the things we see, right, is that one of the things that can fall off are those preventative aspects of restorative practices. And when we don't do that, when we don't build that sense of belonging, kids who are already experiencing marginalization or might be more likely to be excluded or experience discrimination, that can be a real problem then for asking them to engage in these practices. So there's some research, for instance, that shows LGBTQ students in restorative practice schools report less sense of belonging than their peers. They report feeling less likely to feel heard or feel safe when we do these kind of restorative practices. And so that keeps students from being able to fully engage. And we have to think about the policy environment in a changing landscape where we have things like don't say gay, or we have things like bans on critical race theory. And we see, for instance, when schools actually take an explicit anti-racist approach in their restorative justice, we actually are more likely than to see effectiveness in reducing the gaps in exclusionary discipline that we really hope to gain. So we have to think about all of our learners, whether that's ESL students who might need language supports and being able to access and be a part of these programs, or it's students that are experiencing bullying because of who they are, that then might be in a restorative conference, and that might be sort of problematic if we haven't addressed those underlying drivers in order to really promote a whole sense of belonging in the school to build these practices on.
Right, and I would argue it would be very difficult for our students who do not yet speak English or facing ICE raids at home in their communities, sometimes near their grounds that are close to them, to feel safe in any space. It's a very difficult thing to achieve. Senator Brooks, how do restorative practices exist alongside current models of discipline?
In tandem, yes. We're not going to deviate from some of the disciplinary actions that based on the infraction, but at the same time, we want to approach it from a different perspective. We want to use restorative first and foremost. Then we go ahead and engage whatever action that needs to be. I think when you create an environment, a culture of safety, and you've got kids buying in, making sure that everyone is being held accountable, and the goal is to make sure that there's not selective punishment. We want to do things to improve the overall environment and have the other kids become a part of that. And then you've got the team concept, and everybody is working and pulling in the same direction. So, and also along with the SROs, we want them to be a part of this concept as well. There could be some retraining there. And we don't want to look at it from a position of authority or threat. We want those SROs, and we want the kids to view them as allies, as opposed to people there who are trying to, as adversaries, I should say. So that's the overall concept. We want this community to feel part of, and we want to uplift all kids at the same time. Kids, teachers, the SROs, the administration, everybody is a part of this concept.
Okay, and what supportive legislation has been passed to make this a reality?
I'm glad you asked. Senate Bill 68, which was a bill that I introduced, and we changed the name from restorative concept to restorative practices. And a practice is something that we engage in, something that we do, and we want that particular part of the name to be a part of what the intention of the bill is. That, and as well, we want other schools to, it's enabling, so other schools can join in and pick up on this concept, like Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Montgomery County, and then see how drawing these circles has such a positive impact on all the kids. We want to reduce the amount of conflicts that are in the school. And if we think about it, the kids, the neocortex doesn't fully develop until you're 25. So how do we expect kids to make rational decisions all the time when a lot of the adults are not, So we want to, so we don't want to give them the tools that they need to be able to how to engage in trying to resolve and making that whole environment a lot safer, not only for the kids, but for the teachers, the administration, and everybody that's involved.
Right,
Yes.
that element of safety is so important for everyone.
Yes.
And I would argue 25, we might want to boost that to maybe 45, I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
Tamar, you have a couple minutes. Can you explain examples like this being applied? Where have you seen this successfully done and then perhaps blown up?
Yeah, well, first let me say I'm so excited that you spearheaded this legislation, that it was passed. I think it's going to make a real difference in Maryland and really be a game changer for a lot of students. And I will now put in a shameless plug for a policy package that my colleagues and I are developing with funding from the Bloomberg American Health Initiative. We are working in partnership with Zeke Cohen, Council President in Baltimore City, and the Trauma Informed Care Task Force. And the idea really is to help spur legislation changes like the one that recently happened in Maryland. So this toolkit will include model legislation language and best practices for delivering restorative practices or really making restorative schools. And also summarize key data to drive policy change. We really need this because close to 20 states still allow corporal punishment in schools. There's an estimated 70,000 students who are actually experiencing corporal punishment each year, and a majority of schools still use expulsion and exclusionary school discipline for minor infractions and student misbehaviors. And we know that these things are applied inequitably and they have really harmful effects. So we need this kind of legislation so we can really help our students thrive.
And part of it has to be we want to keep children in school, right? We don't want to send them home. And can any of you talk about that? The ability of this tool to be able to keep the kids engaged and in school, and how valuable that is to their learning.
Yeah. When this kid is sent home instead of being in school, when we look at what the information or the teaching, the reason for that kid to be in school, all of that is lost. And then if that was going to help that child mitigate those challenges that he or she is experiencing, then by all means. But it's not. I mean, there's a detriment there for that child. So yes, we want to keep that kid in school. We want to teach them how to deal with situation. And we all have bad days, but how do we coalesce around that particular child and teach them how to meander those challenges that we all have to face from time to time, So the goal is to keep them there, teach them how to mitigate, and then move forward.
Okay. Anyone would like to have the last word? We have a little bit of time.
I think the only thing that I would add to this conversation, which is so great, is that I'm a global researcher, and so I always come to each problem with the thinking of culture and context. And so as we think about taking a practice that's shown effectiveness for these things and implementing it in a wide variety of schools, what are the cultural and contextual factors, right? So schools are implementing a lot of different programs, and those have the potential to be synergistic, but we have to support administrators to do that. And we're also talking about a shift in culture, right? Like as Tamar is talking about these schools that still have policies in place, there's a shift in how we think about discipline and how we think about the relationship between students and teachers and how we think about a lot of sort of aspects of hierarchy. And that might take ongoing support, coaching for teachers, coaching for administrators, ongoing supervision and monitoring we have to be willing to invest into.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd like to one thing.
Of course.
Yeah, and one final thing. I don't know what % kids are of our present, but they're definitely 100% of our future. And we want to make sure we arm them with all the tools that we can to protect us properly.
Well said. Well said.